All right. I'm just going to stop it there. Um, I just released an EP called Isolate. This is the first track on that EP. I just wanted to go through it, have a look at how I made it. Not too in depth, but because it is kind of a complicated session. But yeah, just sort of run through the basic elements and have a look. So I actually made this track as a assignment submission at Collarts, which is the university I went to. And I think the brief was that we had to use like random elements. But I've got here a random rhythm, which has been recorded so that I could get it like a version of it that would never change for the finished track. But the initial sound was based on randomized rhythms using like a random arpeggiator and a drum rack. And what makes this track maybe a little bit different from a lot of my other tracks, or traditionally the way I make tracks, is that I often have like some hardware elements which I then record in and then I start to mess with in the box. And those elements get messed with so heavily that they often don't resemble that much what they started with. But either way, this track is all in the box. Like, I think the whole thing was just made in Ableton. I don't know, just if that matters to anybody. But it's interesting to me. So these random elements, as you can hear, it's a pretty cool little randomized beat. Like, it still sounds like gridded and quantized, and it still sounds musically relevant, I would say, but it was random. And that was kind of the sort of basis for the track. I then ended up adding lots more. So I've got this little drum element here as well. Let's have a listen to that. And that's just the main kick and snare. It's just a sample, nothing special. Although I will say that I like this kick quite a lot. I don't know where I found it. It's, what does that say? Vapor MIDI kick. I think that's what it says. I've got a lot of sample packs. It's in there somewhere. And then what's this one? I didn't label any of this stuff because I'm an idiot, but we're just going to go through it. So, as you can hear, that's just the sort of clap sound. But what is interesting about it is made up of 5 sounds layered on top of each other. Just check this clip. And one of them is flamming, which gives it that flam effect, shockingly. But I like that effect, and I think it's a very powerful like click sound, which with that sound and the kick drum, I feel like that's, even though there's a lot more, those 2 elements are really key to making this track the way it is. Like, I can't imagine it without those 2 sounds, but maybe that's just because I'm too close to the track. Here we've got some, what does that say? Warped break. I think I got this break from a sample pack. Oh, what's it called? Like, it's a drum and bass like breaks sample pack by Blue Martin, I believe. I think that's where I got it. Let's have a listen. I might have warped this a little. Maybe not. I can't remember. Maybe that's just it. I did fuck around with it a bit here. Just chopping it up a bit. Nothing special. Nothing complicated. And then here, I actually don't know what this sound is, so let's just have a listen. So instead of using a sample or something, I used Falcon, which is one of my favorite soft synths. It's very versatile. I actually do a whole YouTube series, or have been doing a whole YouTube series on programming this synth, if you're interested. I used the noise and just some filtering and sample rate reduction, the wave shaper. Nothing fancy, just some rudimentary sound design to get this sound. And then I've got classic vintage verb. Who doesn't love the vintage verb? And I've got my hi-hats here. Let's have a listen to them. Again, on their own, really nothing fancy. I don't know why I keep saying nothing fancy. Like, all of the best tracks that I can think of, almost none of them have anything fancy. It's just, it's the curation of simplistic element that really makes a track amazing. Let's have a listen to this sound. I actually just remembered that part of this assignment was to have like polymeter rhythms, I think, as well. So I've got this main synth that sort of stabs throughout the track is running at a different rate to the main meter of the song. You can hear it. I'll just play it with the music. It creates a very fun effect. And with that sound, it's frozen at the moment, but I'm just using an analog. I don't use Ableton stock plugins that much. I mean, they are really good, but I often find I just have better plugins, which I've paid for. Not that I'm saying you have to pay for plugins to get good plugins, but, you know, quite often paid plugins are very good. And in this case, I think the good thing about analog is that, like, you can just, if you want to just dial in a sound really fast, then you can just do that. Like, it's super quick. And with this sound, I just wanted like a virtual analog sort of stab. Didn't have to be anything particularly special. But then on top of that, I've processed the fuck out of it with various Valhalla effects, some FabFilter processing, and Analog Obsession plugins, and some sound toys. So you end up with something pretty special, which sounds like this later on in the song. So I'm sure you can hear, but I've got a lot of modulation or I should say automation happening on this. So the Valhalla Room reverb, and you might notice that I've got this set as an insert effect rather than a send effect, and I'm just modulating the mix, and that's not like normally what you should do or what I would normally do. But it's all just like context dependent, right? Like in this situation, the reason why I did it is because I wanted, as I increased the mix, I wanted the dry signal to also go down. So it made sense to do it that way. And you can hear it because like the sound shifts quite dramatically from a very, I wouldn't say a dry signal, but like a sort of a more dry signal to a really washed out, like wide signal. And that's just part of the aesthetic of that sound. And I feel like it works with the energy of the track. So that's why I did it like that. Let's have a listen to some of these other elements. I've got this lead here, which I also used analog for, which I don't normally, but I just did. And it worked out really well. I really like these sounds. So let's just have a listen. So the magic ingredient with this song, or with this sound, as I'm sure you can hear, is Valhalla Delay, Soundtoys Devil Lock, bit of EQ, a fair bit of shimmer, bit of analog obsession to warm it up, a bit more saturation, some erosion to give it that crackly. I find erosion's really good just to sort of push a sound through the mix. Like just a subtle amount of it can just really bring it to the fore, which can be really helpful. And then I got a final bit of EQ over here. Yeah, like I think that's the thing with analog and with other Ableton stock plugins is that, and this is true of a lot of plugins, but you've sort of got to dress it up a bit. Like this is a great sound source, but I would want to process it further to get the sound I want, because I do find that there is, I don't know, there's a quality to the sound of theirs which is a bit aliased, it's a bit harsh on the high frequencies, but you can remedy that just with further processing and a lot of saturation and stuff, and then you get something that I really think works. But I guess that's sort of true of just mixing in general. Like dry sounds are really dry. They're really uninspiring, I think. And as soon as you start processing them and sound designing and adding effects, you get something that really like lives within the track rather than is just sort of floating alongside it. So that's my advice with using analog is you got to process the fuck out of it to get something good. But I think that's just true of music, at least the music that I like to make. So this sound here, which I'm about to play, is kind of like the final, I suppose, like reward for getting through the whole track. Is there's this nice little hook at the end, this melodic element, which is a Falcon patch, and it's a modified preset from, I want to say it's from Falcon 2.5 update. It's a wavetable sound. I did edit it. I can't remember what I did. Yeah, Falcon 2.5 sounds. I don't often use presets, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with using presets. I often use them as like the cherry on top. Like I'll build the whole track with sounds that I've made, and then when I need a sound for a bit at the end where I'm like, oh, like a lead sound would be really good there, then I'll often just go looking through presets and I'll just modify one that I like. And I think that's what happened here. And I've actually used this preset in a few different tracks now because it's just great. I just think it's awesome. And again, I've done a lot of processing on it. More Valhalla Room, more reverb with FalFilter Pro R, bit of multi-band compression. I think I've got some upwards compression there as well to bring the high frequencies. Let's just have a listen to it. Cool. As you can see here at the end, I've got this EQ that I've turned off. I obviously, right at the end of the mixing process, decided, oh, I'll just turn that off, and I thought it probably worked better and never got around to deleting it. That happens. And I just keep them there often, just like, oh, maybe later, but now this track is out, it's finished, it's done, and it's better this way. Like, I obviously made the right choice. At least I think I did. So this next track along is just a riser effects, which I'm pretty sure I made out of a reverb tail, which I reversed from one of these other sounds, possibly this keys sound. So if I just play it. Yeah, so it's a reverb tail of the sound that you could hear ringing out there, that keys sound. This is a technique that I mean, it's not just me, like lots of people do this, but like I make custom riser sounds from reverb tails in the session that I need them for. So like it's so that they're like harmonically relevant to the rest of the track. So when that fades in, and then as it drops off, the actual sound that it came from comes in. So it sort of creates this like continuity. Almost every single one of my tracks of the past, I don't even know how many years, has these risers in it. I actually really need to go through them all and sort of collate them into like a sample pack, I think, because I really like them, and I like using them between songs, and sometimes I'll drag them in from an Ableton session just because I think they're good. But anyway, that's that. I've also got the sort of just the tail element, I think. That's what I took the riser from, I think, but then I just sort of chopped it or warped it a bit in Ableton. All right, so let's move on. I've got here my bass instruments, and there are 3. I've got Zebra 2, I should say. I've had this synth for so long. It's such an old synth. They've recently updated it, updated the interface and everything. Still sounds great. I think I bought it in 2012. It's really, maybe earlier, 2010 or something. It's really old. Sounds great. Still sounds great. I don't use it that much anymore, but it is fantastic synth. And it's quite easy to just dial in sounds, simple sounds and stuff, or get really complex with it. I've also got a Falcon here, which is no surprise to me anyway. This is a patch that I made called Subdom. Don't ask. And it's a really simple sound, like a sine wave, which is slightly detuned with another sine wave, and then a saw wave or a triangle wave slightly detuned with another triangle wave, and 2 filters. Oh, and a chorus. I guess that expander filter down here. Where are we? Here we go. Has an interesting slope on it. Like, you don't see that very often. And then I have Massive here, and they're all layered together in different ways. Had Massive for ages as well. It's a good synth. Very old, very good. Let's just hear what they sound like together. So each element, the Zebra sounds like this. It's providing a little bit of high end. I'm pretty sure the Falcon will be the sub. Sub with a bit of high end as well. Don't remember what the massive sound is. Let's have a listen. I mean, it's a very similar sound to the Falcon sound, but it's very mid-rangey. Like there's no sub in it. So we got high frequency, sub, and mids. And I think I added that. I layered it over here just to sort of boost, at least at the end of the track here. And I guess I put it here as well, but to sort of boost it because the track gets kind of busy at the end. And you need it to come through a bit more. And I obviously felt like the bass wasn't coming through enough. And I think that that is actually a good time to talk about this kind of technique where it's like, instead of EQing one sound to your desires or your needs, it's good to have different sounds layered together that provide different elements of what you need. Like if I have a sub here and I think that it needs a little bit of high end, I think it's way better to add another instrument that provides some high end rather than like open the filter on that synth or EQ the fuck out of the high end to bring it out. It's like, that sounds unnatural and bad. Well, it doesn't always, but it often does. And in this case, you just add a layer of another synth, and they all combine together. And to anyone listening, they wouldn't know that that's what you've done. But the results are always better, and it's like such a simple thing. So yeah, that's just sound design. Like why, like, use the right tool for the job, I guess, is what I'm saying. And if you need a bit of high end, just add another element of high end that matches the other element. Don't try to tweak your original sound because it'll just sound worse. I feel like that's some sort of life advice as well. Anyway, I don't know how. Let's not delve too deeply. All right, let's have a listen to this sound. So I've got this riser sound, which I'm using analog for again. It's probably the most I've used analog in forever in this one track. A lot of processing on it, as I've talked about. I've got this tremolator, which is providing the sort of stuttery gated effect. Might be interesting to hear it without that. Lol, it's pretty similar. I think what I'm doing here is this. This is a great trick, actually. If you've got tremolator, I've got this, the rhythm of it set to a very similar or a complementary rhythm to the actual rhythm of the synth itself. I've changed this width control, and that offsets stereo field or the left and right from each other, so you kind of get almost like an auto pan / chorusy kind of effect, but it's really good for widening up a signal. Like if you don't have a stereo widener, this is a good like hack. And even if you do have a stereo widener, this provides like a slightly different effect, which I think is useful and interesting. So that's why I use that. There's a lot of other processing on here. Got this gate, actually, this is what's providing the main stutter, and it's coming from this. So I've got this hi-hat pattern, which I've just taken one chunk of, and I've just created a pattern that I want, and then that is mapped to this gate effect. So let's have a listen to that. So you can hear the effect that has. That is a really great trick. Again, nothing complex about it, nothing special about it. I certainly did not invent that, obviously. But it's a really neat trick, and you get a lot of control over the rhythm and the design of your sound by using this gate tool and a different source as your rhythm input. I guess it's kind of like using the vocoder in Ableton as well and having a different source. Like you can get some really interesting results with that as well. Let's move on. So here I've got a very quick sound that sort of comes in and then it leaves, and that's it. Let's have a quick listen. So, so I made this with Wavetable. The thing that's creating the stuttery effect is this shaper on the volume. Pretty basic sound, all things considered. I've got my favorite Soundtoys plugins. Love Microshift. Cannot get enough of this plugin. This is like the lifeblood of music in the digital space. Anyway, it's so good. It's probably one of my most used plugins. It's extremely powerful for how simple it is, and you can shape sound in the stereo field so carefully with it, and it also just makes everything sound so rich and special. There aren't that many. I mean, there are a lot of plugins out there, but it's high praise and it's especially one with 4 knobs on it. Like there's not a lot going on, but it's transformative to your sound. I'm just echoing what so many people have said. It is fan-fucking-tastic plugin. Filter Freak, also a great plugin. Do think a little bit overrated, maybe. It's very powerful. Sound is really good, especially when you drive it. I have other filter plugins which I reach for when I want like maybe a more aggressive sound. I find that it's just a bit too smooth and not like very bitey, which is fine for like a lot of situations. But yeah, I obviously wanted to use it here. It's a very good plugin. Very good plugin. What else have I got here? A Decapitator, also an excellent plugin. This is pretty much my go-to compressor. Fantastic compressor. Again, like really simple, but so powerful. Really tweakable. Excellent for sidechain duties. Great plugin. And then what have I got here? Oh yeah, Analog Obsession. I can't say enough good things about the Analog Obsession plugins, by the way. They are just, for free, you just cannot get better than that. And they sound better than a lot of my paid plugins. So, yeah, you should definitely get on that bandwagon. Echo Boy, probably one of the best delay plugins ever made, hands down. All right, so we got this pad here. Let's have a listen to that. So, as you saw, I'm using Spitfire Audio's Cinematic Pads bundle, which is a very good sounding plugin for pads. I do find often when I reach for it, the sounds don't fit in my mix. I almost feel like you need to use it more as a starting point to build from rather than to use it later. In this track, it obviously, like, I think it works very well, but I do find that it's not as useful a collection of sounds as I sort of hoped it would be. But they are of a very high quality, and for what they're doing, like cinematic stuff, it's good. It's definitely good. Not a lot of plugins here. Bit of Volcano for free for filtering in some spots. Another Analog Obsession plugin here. Really excellent stuff. And probably my most used Analog Obsession plugin is this EQ, especially for this 10K boost knob. Fuck, man. It's very, very good. Just the whole plugin provides saturation, but when you boost this, you get this really nice high-end saturation. So let's just have a listen to that with and without. It's like night and day. Night and day. Okay. Last sound. Last two sounds. Got like a vinyl crackle on this. And some bird sounds, which I heavily stretched so they kind of glitch out. Let's just have a listen. So yeah, that crackle runs through the whole track, and the birds sort of bookend it. This is a really neat trick that I find grounds your track, is adding a very quiet element of like atmosphere under the whole track. You won't even hear it in large sections of the track, probably just at the beginning and the end, but having it there provides like this context. It's this bed that everything sits on. I'm not saying you always have to do it, like there's a time and a place kind of thing, but I find especially for sort of more like atmospheric sort of sound, it's just invaluable. It just elevates everything. Anyway, we've come to the end. I don't know if any of that was helpful. I guess we can have a quick look at my bus as well. I just go over here. We've got a Valhalla room. I've got a sidechain compressor on it as well, so that it doesn't get in the way of the kick. I've got a Saturn, which is this guy here. It's multi-band saturator from FabFilter. And that is going into a flanger from UHE or UI, which is being EQ'd, and then it's being reverberated and widened. Possibly my favorite Waves plugin right here. And I've got a lot of them. I use this one quite a lot, but I don't really use many of their others. Over here, I've got a Pro R. This is a really excellent reverb. Before I got Eventide's Black Hole, this was sort of like my go-to lush reverb, which kind of replaced the Valhalla stuff. All of these reverbs that I'm mentioning are all really excellent. and none of them are better than the other. It's just like sort of flavor of the month kind of thing. Like you get a new reverb and you're like, oh fuck, I love this one. This is a great reverb. Eventide Space. Oh, sorry, Black Hole. Incredible reverb. And I recently just got UVI's Spark Verb. Also very good. They're all good. I love reverbs. Here I've got a Valhalla delay going into a Valhalla room, and it's all being sort of slightly saturated and compressed by Devilock. This is a fantastic plugin, by the way. Next to Microshift, possibly the most important Soundtoys plugin. I use it usually extremely subtly, just tiny bits of it, but that's all you need. Just like the tiniest smidgen of it, and it just like makes the sound so much richer. So yeah, highly recommend that. I mean, all Soundtoys stuff. It's, you know, I sound like a bit of a broken record, but Soundtoys stuff is really exceptional. And here I've got another Valhalla delay, this time going into a Pro R. It's just different settings for a different use, and I've got another Devilock. So anyway, that's going to conclude my long-winded look at this track. I figured I'll just play it out from over the end, and I'll go from here. There's one more track down the bottom here, but that's just for me to record my vocal on this video. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Catch you later.